Commander Lyra watched the warning lights flash across every console on the bridge of the Stellar Dream. Her violet skin had lost its usual shimmer, and her four-fingered hands gripped the command chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The ship was dying, and everyone knew it. She was the youngest commander in the Zilani fleet at only 80 cycles old, which was considered barely an adult for her species. Her people were known throughout the galaxy for their military excellence and advanced technology. They had built an empire that spanned 12 star systems and commanded respect from even the oldest civilizations, but none of that mattered now in the empty darkness between the stars. The explosion had happened 3 days ago during what should have been a routine jump through hyperspace. One moment they were traveling faster than light, and the next they were thrown back into normal space with half their engine core missing. The blast had killed 2 crew members, instantly, and left the rest of them drifting in a region of space that most species avoided. Lyra looked around the bridge at her remaining crew. They came from different worlds and different species, but they all served the Zilani Empire with pride. Her science officer, Crix, was a Theron with blue-scaled skin and 6 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. He was frantically working at his station, trying to boost their distress signal. "Nothing, Commander," he said without looking up. "The signal is broadcasting, but we are too far from any trade routes or military patrols. The chances of anyone hearing us are less than 2%. Her tactical officer, Vorn, was from a warrior race called the Kandari. He stood 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms that were now crossed in frustration. "Our weapons are offline and our shields are failing," he reported. "We are defenseless if pirates find us." The navigator was a Yanari named Selu, whose tentacles danced over the controls as she tried to plot their position. "We are in the dead zone," she said, her voice rippling like water. "This region has been abandoned for decades after the old mining colonies failed. No one comes here anymore." Lyra stood up and walked to the main viewport, staring out at the endless black. She had trained for combat and diplomacy, but nothing had prepared her for this slow death in the void. They had maybe 6 hours of oxygen left, and the temperature was dropping as their power cells failed one by one. She thought about her mother back on Zaylan Prime, who had been so proud when Lyra received her command. Her mother had served in the fleet for 200 cycles and had fought in 3 major wars. She had taught Lyra that a commander must never show fear even when facing death. But Lyra was afraid now, more afraid than she had ever been in her life. The rest of the crew was scattered throughout the ship, trying to make repairs or conserve power. There were 12 of them in total, including herself. Each one had family and friends waiting for them to come home. Each one had dreams and plans that would never be fulfilled if they died out here. Her chief engineer, Malak, was a Gorvani with thick red skin and 2 hearts that pumped different types of blood. He had been working without rest since the explosion, trying to fix the engines, but even his incredible strength and endurance had limits. She could see him on the monitor in the engine room, his massive frame hunched over a console as sparks flew around him. The medical officer was Dr. Ixara from the peaceful Villani species. She had delicate features with silver skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. She was rationing their medical supplies and preparing for the worst. Her people were empaths who could feel the emotions of others, and Lyra knew the fear and despair of the crew must be overwhelming for her. In the cargo bay, the security team was organizing their remaining supplies. Lieutenant Zara was a fellow Zilani who had served with Lyra for 10 cycles. She was older and more experienced, having fought in the border conflicts with the hegemony. She kept the younger crew members calm. With her steady presence and quiet confidence, the 2 junior officers were twins from the aquatic Narati species. They needed water to breathe comfortably, and their tanks were running low. They floated in their specially designed chairs, looking at each other with large black eyes that reflected the emergency lights. They were only on their first tour of duty and had never faced real danger before. Lyra returned to her command chair and opened a ship-wide channel. "This is the commander," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I know our situation seems hopeless, but we are not giving up. We have sent out a distress signal, and we will continue broadcasting until our last moment. Someone will hear us. Someone will come." She did not really believe her own words, but she had to give them hope. She had to be the leader. They needed even if she felt like a frightened child inside. The weight of command pressed down on her shoulders heavier than the ceremonial armor she wore during parades. Crix suddenly straightened at his station, his 6 eyes widening. "Commander, I am detecting something on long-range sensors. A ship is approaching." Pirates, Vorn asked, reaching for weapon controls that would not respond. Crix adjusted his scanners and frowned. "No. The configuration is wrong, it is too small, and the energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It appears to be a single vessel with primitive fusion engines and minimal shielding." Primitive Selu said, her tentacles writhing in confusion. Who would travel in such a ship? The unknown vessel was moving directly toward them at maximum speed for its limited engines. It would reach them in approximately 20 minutes. Lyra felt a mix of hope and fear. Perhaps it was a scavenger ship looking for salvage. Or maybe it was something worse. "Can you identify the species?" Lyra asked. Crix worked at his console for a moment, then looked up in complete shock. "Commander, according to our database, that ship design matches the new species that recently achieved faster than light travel. They call themselves humans, Thais." Bridge went completely silent. Everyone knew about humans, though few had ever seen one. They were the newest members of the galactic community, having only developed space travel 50 years ago. Most species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years and looked at humans the way adults might look at children. Taking their first steps, humans were considered primitive and reckless by galactic standards. They built ships that should not work and took risks that no reasonable species would. Consider their technology was crude and their understanding of physics was basic at best. Yet somehow they had managed to spread to several star systems in just a few decades. "Why would a human ship be here?" Vorn asked. "This region is dangerous even. For advanced vessels, a primitive ship should not be able to survive." Lyra had no answer, but as the ship grew closer on their sensors, she felt something she had not felt in 3 days. She felt hope. The human ship Liberty Bell was nothing like the sleek vessels of the Zilani fleet. It looked like someone had welded metal boxes together and attached engines that belonged on a freight hauler. The hull was scarred with patches and repairs from what must have been dozens of missions. Paint was peeling off in places, and one of the sensor arrays was held on with what appeared to be industrial tape. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on her small bridge looking at the massive alien vessel on her screen. She was 32 years old, with brown skin weathered by radiation exposure and black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her flight suit had seen better days, with patches covering tears and burns from years of dangerous cargo run. Next to her stood her engineer, Kyle Washington, a tall man with dark skin and arms marked with scars from engine repairs. He was 28 and had been working on ships since he was 16. His clothes were stained with oil, and his tool belt looked like it weighed 50 pounds. Their pilot, Maria Santos, was barely 25, with bronze skin and quick hands that danced over the controls. She had learned to fly in the asteroid mines of Mars, where one mistake meant death. She chewed gum constantly, which helped her concentrate during difficult maneuvers. The Liberty Bell was a cargo hauler, not a rescue ship. They had been transporting mining equipment to a human colony when they picked up the distress signal. Most captains would have ignored it, knowing the dangers of this region of space. But Amy was not most captains. "That ship is huge," Maria said, looking at the readings. "It must be 10 times our size." Kyle whistled low. "Zilani Empire, according to the registration. They are one of the big powers out here. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Amy nodded but did not look away from the screen. She knew all about the Zilani and their reputation. They were proud warriors who had conquered dozens of species and built an empire through strength. But right now they were just people in trouble, and that was all that mattered to her. "Open a channel," Amy said. Maria worked the communications console, which sparked and made a grinding noise before connecting. Amy grabbed the microphone, which was held together with electrical tape. "This is Captain Amy Rodriguez of the cargo hauler Liberty Bell," she said clearly. "We picked up your distress signal and are coming to help. Stand by for docking." There was silence for a long moment. Then a female voice answered, speaking English with a strange accent. "This is Commander Lyra of the Stellar Dream. We are grateful for your response, but our situation is critical. We have less than 6 hours of oxygen remaining, and our power systems are failing." Amy looked at Kyle, who was already pulling up the specs for Zilani life support systems. "We can help with that," she said. "We've got emergency oxygen tanks and portable generators. We also have repair equipment, though I am not sure how compatible it will be with your technology." Commander Lyra paused again, clearly surprised. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? You do not know us. We could be enemies of your people." Amy smiled, though the alien commander could not see it. "Because 40 years ago, my grandmother was stranded in an escape pod after pirates attacked her colony ship. An alien crew saved her even though humans meant nothing to them. She raised me to believe that in space we all look out for each other." Kyle was already moving to the cargo bay to prepare supplies while Maria maneuvered the Liberty Bell toward the alien ship. The size difference was intimidating, like a rowboat approaching a cruise liner, but the little human ship did not hesitate. The docking was tricky, since the two ships used different systems. Maria had to manually adjust their approach 12 times before the magnetic clamps could engage. She was sweating by the time they finally connected, but she managed it with the skill that came from years of dangerous flying. Amy suited up in her patched EVA gear and checked her equipment. She had an old plasma cutter that she had bought secondhand, a medical kit that was missing half its supplies, and a tool bag that had belonged to her father. The oxygen tanks they were bringing were past their expiration date, but still functional. Kyle and Maria suited up as well, though their gear was in even worse condition. Maria's helmet had a crack that had been sealed with emergency foam, and Kyle's left glove had to be held on with tape, but they did not complain. This was just another day for a human crew in deep space. The airlock cycled open and Amy stepped into the alien ship. The corridor was tall and elegant, with smooth walls that seemed to pulse with a faint light. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal, and the air smelled strange, like copper and flowers. She checked her scanner and saw that the oxygen levels were dangerously low. 3 figures waited for them, and Amy had to stop herself from staring. Commander Lyra was 7 feet tall, with violet skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim emergency lighting. She had 4 fingers on each hand, and her eyes were larger than a human's with no visible whites. She wore elaborate armor that looked both ceremonial and functional. Next to her stood a blue-scaled being with 6 eyes that moved independently, and a massive gray creature with 4 arms. Both looked at the humans with expressions Amy could not read, but she thought she saw surprise and maybe confusion. "Welcome aboard the Stellar Dream," Commander Lyra said formally. "I am Commander Lyra. This is Science Officer Crix," and Tactical Officer Vornamy pulled off her helmet, since the air, though thin, was still breathable. "Nice to meet you all," she said casually. "Let's get your life support back online first, then we can worry about your engines. Where is your emergency power coupling?" The aliens exchanged glances, clearly not expecting the humans to immediately get to work. Crix stepped forward. "This way," he said, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "But our technology is far more advanced than yours. I doubt your equipment will be compatible." Kyle laughed as he hefted a bag of tools. "You would be surprised what humans can jury-rig with enough tape and determination." They followed the aliens through corridors that were failing one by one. Emergency lights flickered, and in some sections they had to use flashlights to see. Crew members of various species watched them pass with expressions of shock and curiosity. A silver-skinned female approached them, her large eyes filled with concern. "I am Dr. Ixara," she said softly. "Your species is not in our medical database. If you are injured, I may not be able to treat you." Maria grinned, showing no fear. "Do not worry about us. Doc, humans are tougher than we look. We once had a crew member survive 3 days with a punctured lung and a broken leg. He walked himself to the medical bay when we finally found him." They reached the life support center, where a massive red-skinned being was working frantically at a console. His 2 hearts were beating visibly through his chest as he tried to reroute power from failing systems. "This is Chief Engineer Malak," Lyra said. "He has been working without rest since the explosion." Amy walked up to the huge alien, who was easily twice her size, and put a hand on his arm. "You have done great work keeping everyone alive this long," she said. "Now let us help." Malak looked down at the tiny human woman with confusion. "But you are so small, and your technology is primitive." Amy smiled and pulled out her plasma cutter, which looked like it had been repaired with spare parts from 3 different machines. This cutter might be ugly, but it works. Kyle's grandfather used it to build the first Mars colony dome. Now, where is your primary oxygen recycler? For the next 2 hours, the humans worked alongside the aliens. Kyle crawled through maintenance shafts that were too small for most of the crew, cutting away damaged sections and welding patches with equipment that should not have worked but somehow did. Maria rewired circuits using techniques she had learned from old Earth manuals that predated faster-than-light travel. Amy coordinated everything, keeping track of 12 different problems at once. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans worked. They did not stop to rest or complain about the difficulty. They told jokes and stories while hanging upside down in maintenance shafts or squeezing through gaps that seemed impossibly small. When something did not work, they did not give up. They just tried something else. Kyle used electrical tape to hold a power coupling together that should have required molecular bonding. Maria bypassed an entire control system. Using a handheld computer that looked like it came from a museum, Amy somehow got 2 incompatible systems to work together, using nothing but determination and a translation program she had written herself. The life support system made a grinding noise, then suddenly hummed back to life. Clean oxygen began flowing through the vents and the temperature started rising back to comfortable levels. The alien crew cheered in their various languages, and Amy wiped sweat from her forehead with a cloth that was more grease than fabric. That should hold for now, she said. But we need to look at your engines next. If we can get even partial power restored, you can make it to the nearest station. Commander Lyra stood watching the small human woman with something like wonder in her large eyes. You have been working for hours without rest. You must need food. And water. Kyle laughed from where he was still wedged in a maintenance shaft. His legs were sticking. Out at an odd angle, humans can go for days without proper food if we have to. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We are used to tough conditions. Maria pulled out a bag from her kit and started handing out protein bars to everyone. They were basic emergency rations that tasted like cardboard mixed with vitamins, but they would keep someone going. The aliens looked at the brown bars with suspicion. Try it, Amy said, taking a bite of her own. It's not great, but it will give you energy, Doctor. Ixara scanned one with a medical device and her silver skin pulsed with surprise. These are incredibly dense with nutrients. How does your species digest something so concentrated? Maria shrugged. We eat pretty much anything that does not eat us first. Human stomachs are basically acid tanks that can break down almost any organic matter. The twins from the aquatic Narati species floated over in their water-filled mobility suits. They had been watching everything with their large black eyes, and now one of them spoke in a voice like bubbles. We have heard stories about humans, but we thought they were exaggerations. You are nothing like what we expected. What did you expect? Amy asked, while checking her tools. The other twin answered. We were told humans were primitive and violent, that you fought among yourselves constantly and could not be trusted, that your technology was so basic you should not even have achieved space flight. Kyle crawled out of the shaft covered in some kind of alien lubricant that glowed faintly green. Well, they are not wrong about the fighting part, he said. Humans have been fighting each other since we learned to pick up rocks, but we also learned that we are stronger when we work together. Even if we disagree on everything else, we agree that nobody deserves to die alone in space. They moved to the engine room where the damage was worse than anyone had expected. Half of the main engine core was simply gone, vaporized in the explosion. The remaining half was cracked and leaking exotic particles that made Amy's scanner scream. Warning's chief engineer Malak stood before the ruined engine with his massive shoulders slumped in defeat. It cannot be fixed, he said simply. We would need a complete replacement, and even then the mounting points are destroyed. It would take a shipyard weeks to repair this. Amy walked around the engine, studying it from every angle. She pulled out her tablet, which was held together with tape, and had a screen that flickered constantly. She took pictures and measurements, muttering to herself in Spanish, which she did when she was thinking hard. Kyle. She finally said, what if we do not fix their engine? What if we push them? Kyle looked at her like she had lost her mind. Push them, Amy? This ship mass is probably 10,000 tons. Our little engine would burn out in seconds. Not our engine. Amy said with a grin that meant she had a crazy idea. The Liberty Bell still has those mining charges we were delivering, right? Mariah's eyes went wide. Captain, you cannot be serious. Those are demolition charges for asteroid mining. Exactly, Amy said. And if we place them right and detonate them in sequence, we can use the explosions to push the ship, like old chemical rockets but bigger. The aliens all stared at her in shock. Vorn, the four-armed tactical officer, was the first to speak. You want to use explosives to move our ship through space? That is insane. Amy shrugged. Welcome to human engineering. We call it percussive maintenance. Sometimes you have to hit something really hard to make it work. Commander Lyra looked between Amy and her own crew. The risk would be enormous. If the calculations are wrong, the explosions could destroy what is left of our ship. True, Amy admitted, but sitting here means certain death. At least this way you have a chance. My grandmother used to say that any chance is better than no chance. Crix was already running calculations on his station, his 6 eyes moving independently as he processed multiple data streams. The math is theoretically possible, he said slowly, but the precision required would be extraordinary. One mistake, and we all die. Maria cracked her knuckles. Precision flying is my specialty. Tell me what you need and I will make it happen. For the next 3 hours they worked on the plan. Kyle and Mala carefully placed the mining charges at specific points along the hull. They had to be positioned perfectly to provide thrust without tearing the ship apart. Amy worked with Crix to calculate the exact timing and force needed for each detonation. The other crew members helped where they could. Lieutenant Zara and the security team moved everyone to the safest parts of the ship. Dr. Ixara prepared medical supplies, in case something went wrong. The Narati twins used their underwater skills to navigate flooded sections where coolant had leaked as they worked. Amy learned more about the alien crew. They were not so different from humans, really. They had families they missed and dreams they wanted to achieve. They told bad jokes and complained about regulations. They were scared but trying to be brave. Selu, the tentacled navigator, showed Amy pictures of her offspring back home. They looked like tiny jellyfish. Floating in a tank, Amy showed her a photo of her nephew back on Earth, and they bonded over stories of teaching young ones to be brave. Vorn, despite his warrior appearance, turned out to love poetry from his homeworld. He recited some for Kyle, who did not understand the language but appreciated the rhythm. Kyle shared some Earth poetry in return, though he only remembered dirty limericks, which made Maria smack him. Dr. Ixara was fascinated by human physiology. She scanned all 3 humans, with their permission, and could not believe what she found. Your bodies are incredibly inefficient, she said, but somehow you compensate with redundancy and adaptability. You can survive injuries that would kill most species instantly. We are basically Space Orcs, Maria said with pride. Hard to kill and too stubborn to give up. Finally, everything was ready. The charges were placed and the calculations were complete. The Liberty Bell was positioned behind the Stellar Dream, ready to guide them using its small engines for minor corrections. Everyone was strapped into crash seats except Amy, who stood on the bridge with Commander Lyra. This is either going to work, or we are all going to die, in a very spectacular explosion, Amy said cheerfully. Lyra looked down at the human woman who barely came up to her chest. You are remarkably calm for someone who might be about to die. Amy shrugged again. Death is just another adventure. My grandmother taught me that too. She lived to be 97 after surviving pirates, aliens, and 3 wars. She always said the secret to a long life was to be too stubborn to die young. Are all humans like you 3? Lyra asked. Amy laughed. No. We are actually considered pretty normal. Most humans are even crazier. You should meet the ones who volunteer to test experimental jump drives, or the colonists who settle planets with acid rain. We are practically boring by human standards. Lyra made a sound that might have been laughter. I think I would like to meet more humans if we survive this. When we survive this, Amy corrected. Remember, any chance is better than no chance. She opened a channel to both ships. This is Captain Rodriguez. Everyone hold on tight. This is going to be bumpy. Maria, start the countdown. Maria's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. Detonation in T-minus 60 seconds. All hands brace for impact. Amy strapped herself into a seat next to Lyra. The alien commander's four-fingered hand was gripping the armrest so tightly, the metal was bending. Amy reached over and placed her small human hand on top of it. "It is going to be okay," she said softly. "Trust us. We have got you." Lyra looked at her with those large violet eyes and nodded. "I trust you, Captain T. -30 seconds. Maria announced. Kyle's voice cut in from the Liberty Bell. "Engines are hot and ready, Amy. We will keep you steady. -10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first explosion rocked the ship like a giant hand slapping them forward. The second came a heartbeat later. Then the third, fourth, fifth in precise sequence, each one pushing them faster. The ship groaned and metal screamed, but it held together. The Liberty Bell's engines roared to life, guiding them, keeping them on course. As the explosions continued to propel them forward, Amy watched the speed readings climb higher and higher. They were actually moving. They were actually going to make it. The explosions continued for 12 minutes, each one perfectly timed to maintain acceleration without tearing the ship apart. The Stellar Dream shook and rattled like it was coming apart at the seams, but the hull held. Amy watched the structural integrity readings with one eye while keeping the other on their trajectory. Maria flew the Liberty Bell like she was born to it, using the small cargo hauler's engines to make tiny adjustments that kept the massive alien ship on course. When a charge detonated slightly off-center, she compensated instantly, her hands moving faster than seemed possible. Kyle monitored both ship systems from his position in the Liberty Bell's engine room. He had rigged a direct connection between the two ships' computers, using cables that were definitely not designed for that purpose. His running commentary kept everyone calm, even as sparks flew from overloaded circuits. "Port thruster is running hot, but holding," he reported. "Structural stress is at 90%, but still in the green. We are surfing the edge, but we are surfing." After the last charge detonated, the sudden silence was deafening. Both ships were now coasting through space at a velocity that would carry them to the nearest station in 18 hours. They had done it. They had actually done it. The cheering started in the Stellar Dream's cargo bay and spread throughout the ship. Different species expressed joy in different ways. The Kandari pounded their four fists together. The Theron flashed, their scales in patterns of light, and the Narati sang in harmonious bubbles. But they were all celebrating the same thing. They were going to live. Amy unstrapped herself and immediately had to catch Commander Lyra, who had stood up too quickly and swayed on her feet. The stress of the last few days had taken its toll on the alien commander. Her violet skin was pale and her large eyes were unfocused. "Easy there," Amy said, guiding her back to the chair. "You need rest, and probably about a gallon of water." Lyra looked at her with something approaching awe. "You saved us, you saved all of us." Amy smiled. "We all saved each other. Your crew kept the ship together long enough for us to arrive. You trusted us with your lives. That takes courage, Doctor." Ixara approached with her medical scanner. "Captain Rodriguez, you and your crew need medical attention. You have been exposed to dangerous levels of radiation from our damaged engine core." Amy looked at her burnt and peeling hands for the first time, really noticing the damage. "Occupational hazard," she said lightly. "We will be fine until we reach the station." "That is unacceptable," Ixara said firmly. "I may not be familiar with human physiology, but I can treat radiation exposure. Please let me help over." The next few hours, the two crews worked together in a way that would have seemed impossible just days before Maria taught Selu human card games, which led to the discovery that the tentacled navigator was a master at poker. Kyle and Malak bonded over engineering disasters they had survived, comparing scars and stories. Amy found herself in the medical bay with Dr. Ixara, who was treating her radiation burns with a cooling gel that smelled like mint. The Villani doctor worked with gentle precision, her silver hands moving carefully over the damaged skin. "Your species is remarkable," she said softly. "You threw yourselves into danger without hesitation. You worked until your bodies were failing and never complained." "How do you do it?" Amy thought about the question for a moment. "Humans are not the strongest or the smartest species," she said. We know that. Our ships are held together with tape and prayers. Our technology is generations behind everyone else's. But we have one advantage. What is that? Ixara asked. We are too stubborn to know when we are beaten, Amy said with a grin. We look at impossible odds and think challenge accepted. We see someone in trouble and cannot walk away. It is not always smart, but it is who we are, Vorn approached. His forearms crossed in what Amy had learned was a sign of respect. Captain Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. I called your plan insane. It was insane, Amy said cheerfully. Yes, but it was also brilliant. Vorn continued. My people value courage above all else, and you have shown more courage than warriors with centuries of training. You would make a fine Kandari warrior. Amy laughed. That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. As they traveled toward the station, the two crews shared meals together. The humans introduced the aliens to freeze-dried ice cream, which was met with confusion and delight. The aliens shared their own foods, including a Zalani dish that tasted like spiced honey and a Theran beverage that changed color as you drank it. Commander Lyra and Amy stood together on the bridge watching the stars pass by. They had been talking for hours about their homes, their dreams, and their fears. Lyra had told Amy about the pressure of being the youngest commander in her fleet, and Amy had shared stories about growing up on a mining colony where her grandmother was the only family she had. Your grandmother sounds like she was an extraordinary person, Lyra said. Amy nodded. She was tough as nails and twice as sharp. She used to tell me that humans might be new to space, but we had something special. We had heart, she said, that would take us farther than any engine. Lyra was quiet for a moment, then said, I need to tell you something. Captain Rodriguez, my people, the Zalani are part of a larger alliance. We have influence and resources. When we reach the station, I intend to file a full report about what happened here. Amy looked uncomfortable. We do not need any reward. We just did what anyone would do. No, Lyra said firmly. Not anyone would do what you did. Most ships would have ignored our distress call. The region was too dangerous, the risk too great, but you came anyway. You need to understand what that means. What does it mean? Amy asked. It means that humans are not what the galaxy thinks you are, Lyra said. You are not primitive or backwards. You are brave and ingenious and compassionate. The Alliance needs to know this. Your species has been trying to gain membership for years, but you have been rejected because of your limited technology. Amy knew this was true. Humans were tolerated in space but not respected. They were given the worst trade routes and the most dangerous jobs. They were seen as barely civilized newcomers who would probably destroy themselves within a century. That is going to change, Lyra said with determination. I am going to make sure of it. My report will be read by the highest levels of government. I will tell them how 3 humans in a cargo ship, held together with tape, saved a Zalani military crew. I will tell them how you risked everything for strangers. Kyle's voice crackled over the intercom. Hey, Captain, we are picking up multiple ships on approach. Looks like a rescue fleet. Amy looked at the scanner and saw 5 large vessels approaching, all bearing Zalani military markings. They were sleek and powerful. Everything the Liberty Bell was not. Lyra activated the communication system. This is Commander Lyra of the Stellar Dream, she said formally. We are alive and safe thanks to the crew of the human vessel, Liberty Bell. Stand down all weapons and prepare to escort us to the station. There was shocked silence from the fleet. Then a deep voice responded. Commander Lyra, this is Admiral Thane. We feared you were lost. How did you survive? Lyra looked at Amy and smiled. That is a long story, Admiral. One that needs to be heard by everyone. The rescue fleet surrounded them, and Amy could not help but notice how small and shabby the Liberty Bell looked next to the military vessels. But she also noticed something else. The big ships were flashing their lights in a pattern that she recognized. It was the universal signal for honor and respect. Maria's voice came over the intercom. Captain, are they saluting us? Amy felt tears prick her eyes, though she would never admit it. I think they are, Maria. I think they are. As they approached the station escorted by the fleet, Amy thought about her grandmother and what she would say if she could see this. She would probably make a joke about humans being too stubborn to let anyone die on their watch. Then she would remind Amy that this was just the beginning. The Liberty Bell might be small and held together with tape and determination, but it had just changed history. 3 humans had answered a distress call and saved 12 lives, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what humanity was really made of. Not advanced technology or powerful weapons, but something much more important, the courage to help others even when you are scared, the determination to find solutions even when they seem impossible, the compassion to see strangers as people worth saving. Crix approached them on the bridge, his 6 eyes focused on Amy, Captain Rodriguez. I have been analyzing everything that happened and I have come to a conclusion. What is that? Amy asked. Your species should not exist, he said, which made Amy raise an eyebrow. Everything about you is improbable. Your planet's conditions were harsh. Your evolution was chaotic, your technology is rudimentary. Yet here you are saving lives with explosives and tape. He paused, then continued. My conclusion is that humans exist specifically because you are impossible. You thrive on chaos, adapt to anything, and refuse to accept defeat. The galaxy has never seen anything like you, Amy grinned. That might be the nicest scientific analysis anyone has ever given us. The station was called Haven Point, and it was one of the major trading hubs in this sector of spaceships from dozens of species docked here to trade goods and information. The arrival of the Stellar Dream, escorted by a Zilani military fleet, and one tiny human cargo ship caused quite a commotion as they docked. Amy could see crowds gathering at the viewports. Everyone wanted to see the ship that had survived the dead zone. Many of them pointed at the Liberty Bell, clearly confused about why such a small primitive vessel was being given an honor guard. Commander Lyra insisted that Amy, Kyle, and Maria accompany her crew to the station medical center. The human trio protested, saying they were fine, but Dr. Ixara would not hear of it. She had become protective of them in the way a scientist might protect a fascinating new discovery. The medical center was state-of-the-art with technology that made Earth hospitals look like medieval torture chambers. The chief medical officer was a Gorvani like Malak but with green skin instead of red. He took one look at the humans' readings and his 2 hearts nearly stopped. These humans have lethal levels of radiation exposure. He announced they should be dead or at least unconscious. How are they still walking and talking? Maria shrugged from her examination bed. We ate some protein bars and drank water that usually fixes most things. The medical staff exchanged looks of disbelief as they began treatment. The humans' wounds healed remarkably fast once proper care was applied. Within hours, the radiation damage was repaired and they were pronounced healthy. Though the doctors insisted on keeping them for observation, word of what had happened spread quickly through the station. The story grew with each telling, but the core remained the same. 3 humans in a cargo ship had saved a Zilani military crew using explosives and determination. Representatives from various species came to the medical center wanting to meet these legendary humans. Amy was uncomfortable with the attention. She sat on her medical bed in a borrowed robe that was too big for her, while important-looking aliens filed past Kyle, was enjoying it, making jokes and telling stories to anyone who would listen. Maria had found a deck of cards somewhere and was teaching a group of young Theron how to play poker. Admiral Thane arrived in the evening. He was an older Zilani with deep purple skin and scars that told of many battles. He stood 8 feet tall and wore armor that probably cost more than the Liberty Bell. He looked at Amy with eyes that had seen too much. Captain Rodriguez, he said formally, I have read Commander Lyra's report 3 times. I still cannot believe it. It's all true, Admiral, Amy said, though the explosion part was probably even crazier than she described. The Admiral made that sound that might be Zilani laughter. You used mining charges as improvised engines. That is either genius or madness. Porque no los dos, Amy said, then translated. Why not both? I have been in the military for 200 cycles, the Admiral said. I have seen countless acts of bravery. But I have never seen anything like what you did. You had no obligation to help. You gained nothing from it. You risked everything for strangers. Amy was getting tired of explaining this. It's really not that complicated, she said. When someone needs help, you help them. That is what makes us human. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. Then I am glad humans exist, he said. The galaxy needs more of your kind of madness over the next 3 days. While the Liberty Bell was being repaired and refueled, the station became a gathering place for something unprecedented. Members of different species came to thank the humans and share their own stories of survival. A group of Yanari merchants revealed that a human freight crew had once towed their broken ship for 3 days to safety, refusing payment. A Kandari warrior spoke of human colonists who had shared their last food supplies with his stranded squad during a border conflict. Even some Theron scientists admitted that human researchers had helped them during an expedition gone wrong. Kyle spent his time in the station bars buying drinks with money he did not have and telling increasingly elaborate versions of their rescue. He made friends with everyone from dock workers to diplomats, all of them fascinated by the crazy human who thought explosions could solve anything. Maria found the station's racing circuit where pilots competed in simulation pods. She destroyed every record flying maneuvers that the computer said were impossible. When asked how she did it, she just said, "You have to feel the ship, not think about it." Amy spent most of her time with Commander Lyra working on something they would not tell anyone about. They were seen in deep conversation with station officials and communication specialists, sending messages to Earth and Zealand. Prime on the 4th day, Lyra gathered everyone in the station's main plaza. She stood before a crowd of hundreds with her crew arranged behind her. The 3 humans stood to the side, looking uncomfortable in their patched flight suits among all the formal attire citizens of the galaxy. Lyra began, her voice carrying clearly through the space. 4 days ago, my crew and I should have died in the void. We had given up hope. No one was coming for us because no one could reach us. She paused, looking at Amy. But we were wrong. Someone did. Come 3 humans in a cargo ship barely worthy of spaceflight. They heard our distress call and did not hesitate. They risked their lives for strangers, asked for nothing in return, and saved us with methods that our best engineers called impossible. The crowd murmured, and Lyra continued. I have sent a full report to the Galactic Council, along with testimonies from my entire crew, and many of you here who have shared similar stories about human courage and compassion. She pulled out an official-looking document. The Zalani Empire formally requests that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance. Not in 50 years when their technology catches up. Not in 20 years when they have proven themselves, but now, because they have already proven what matters most. The crowd erupted in discussion. This was unprecedented. New species usually waited centuries for full membership. Humans had only been in space for 50 years. Amy stepped forward. Captain Rodriguez. The crowd quieted. To hear her, this is not necessary. We did not help you for politics or rewards, I know, Lyra said. But that is exactly why it is necessary. The galaxy has been judging species by their technology and military power for too long. We forgot that there are other strengths. Compassion, courage, and determination matter more than the size of your ships or the power of your weapons. Admiral Thane stepped forward. I support this motion. The Zalani military backs full membership for humanity. One by one, other species representatives voiced their support. The Yanari merchants, the Kandari warriors, even the logical Theron scientists. Each had a story about humans who had helped them. Maria whispered to Kyle, "Are we about to accidentally change galactic politics because we use some mining charges creatively?" Kyle whispered back, "I think we are going to need bigger ships." A month later, Amy stood in the Earth Embassy on Haven Point, watching the news feeds from across human space. The Galactic Council had approved humanity's membership by an overwhelming majority. The announcement was being celebrated on every human colony from Mars to the frontier settlements. The Liberty Bell was being repaired in the station dock. Kyle was supervising the work, making sure they did not fix too much. He said the ship needed to keep some personality. Maria was at the controls, running system checks, and probably installing some illegal modifications. Commander Lyra found Amy standing alone, looking out at the stars. Through that viewport, they could see Earth's first official diplomatic vessel arriving. It was still small by galactic standards, but it was a start. Having second thoughts, Lyra asked. Amy shook her head. Just thinking about my grandmother. She always said humans would find their place in the galaxy. I wish she could see this. She would be proud. Lyra said, "You changed everything." Amy, 3 humans in a broken ship, changed the course of history. We just answered a distress call. Amy said. Lyra made that almost laughing sound again. Only humans would say just about something so extraordinary. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Amy asked, "What will you do now?" "Return to duty." Lyra said, "But with a different perspective. I have requested assignment as liaison to Earth. I want to learn more about your people." Amy smiled. "We are not that interesting. Trust me." Lyra looked at her. "You use explosions for propulsion tape, for repairs, and solve impossible problems with stubbornness. You are the most interesting species the galaxy has ever seen." A communication came through from the Liberty Bell. Kyle's voice crackled over the speaker. "Hey, Captain, the repairs are done, and Maria found a card game with some Kandari Marines, I think. She is about to start an interspecies incident." Amy sighed duty calls. Before she left, Lyra handed her a small device. "This is a personal communicator. It works across any distance. If you ever need help or just want to talk, press this button." Amy took it carefully. "Thank you, Lyra." "For everything, thank you," Lyra replied. "For showing us that sometimes the smallest ship can make the biggest differences." Amy walked back to her ship. She thought about how much had changed in just a few days. Humans were now full members of the galactic community. They would have access to trade routes, technology, and knowledge that had been denied before. But more importantly, the galaxy now knew who humans really were. Not primitive newcomers, but a species that would cross the void to save strangers. A species that could look at impossible odds and find a way. A species that believed everyone deserved a chance.